Entire sections of this church are now completely gone. Right now they just brought in the heavy equipment. Now earlier I hit the water with the DNR as they looked for any clues to help find the missing 87-year-old. What they saw was this entire door smashed through and there was a truck parked inside. And you can actually still see the tire marks there. So we're about to test this out. I'm going to drive by Officer McCoy in this car, which has now been reported stolen in the system by WMAZ. It was an emotional moment here at the Capitol in Atlanta as everybody stopped, looked up the gallery for the reaction of Janaea Cox and her 4-year-old daughter Haley. After digging his way underneath the first layer, he got to the outer fence and then pried his way out. I asked Armandito what he wants to do. He says he wants to go to school to become an international businessman. You'd actually be surprised how much of the city is actually caught on camera. They started the project up there at the top of the dome, and they've been working their way down ever since. And as they go, they've been picking off panels like this one that had severe storm damage. Now, earlier, I spoke with a neighbor who said that he, along with a family member that lives next door, tried to get inside to help this woman. So that one is getting a lot of distance going down that hill. And our apologies to Mayor Rickard. They told us that this City of Macon trash can was already broken when they found it.
This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. Come on, now your turn.
When Cheryl Sumlin reads with her daughter, the story is the same.
Can you say that?
In 11 years, Trinity Sumlin has never answered. In fact, she's never spoken a word. She has a mitochondrial disorder where one of the symptoms is having up to 8 full-body seizures a day.
We've led a life immersed in special needs, and maybe one day that label can be removed from her.
It's that hope that's carried them through countless treatments and countless dead ends.
I mean, there's nothing else. We failed all the medications. You know, we failed every intervention that could help.
Earlier this year, they pinned their hopes on HB 885, a bill sponsored by Macon State Rep. Alan Peake that would have allowed a form of medical cannabis in Georgia. Someone joined other parents lobbying in Atlanta for the bill that ultimately failed on the last day of session.
It was just almost like you'd been punched in the gut. And to have to leave the Capitol, come home and look at your child and know that, you know, they weren't going to get an opportunity this year.
There was always moving to Colorado, where it's legal. After all, 4-year-old Haley Cox and her mom Janaea moved there from Forsyth and reported great results on cannabis treatment, even talking for the first time. But for someone, that wasn't an option as a single mom who stopped working 2 years ago to care for Trinity.
And I began to pray and say, how can we get this medicine?
Those prayers were answered thanks to Journey of Hope, a nonprofit that started soon after HB 885 failed. It covers travel, rent, and moving expenses for Georgia families to live in Colorado for up to 6 months. So far, they've raised more than $50,000. The Sumlins are the first family, and they ship out next month. She's already packing boxes and has a checklist, including a quick guide to her new state.
Now I know that I'll be under Governor John Hicklin Looper.
Colorado may be different.
Just the Wild West, just the frontier.
But for this family, a journey of hope is nothing new.
I'll crawl across broken glass just to do whatever I could to help her. Love caused us to uproot from Georgia and move all the way to Colorado just so she could have a better life.
In Union City, Tom George, 13 WMAZ Eyewitness News. Tim Fowle says he often sees squad cars headed to his neighbor's house in Hawkinsville.
The police has been out there 8 to 10 times.
His neighbor, 67-year-old Billy Milner, lives on property owned by his family. Milner says they've been wanting him to move out, and that's led to family arguments and police calls. But on July 22nd, one of those calls ended with this. Milner being tased, all caught on video by his friend next door, Tim Fowle.
Well, at first, when I heard the pop, I thought he was shot. I couldn't believe it.
That's from the stun gun.
Yeah. I got hit with two things right there.
Milner says he was tased from behind while walking away from a deputy. The deputy says Milner wasn't cooperating when told he was going to jail.
The deputy didn't know if he was going after a gun or a knife. The deputy told him to stop, advised him he was under arrest, and tased him when he resisted.
Police charged Milner with battery, saying he hit his brother's girlfriend while trying to get his dog back from her trailer. Milner says he wasn't told of the charge until he got to jail.
He didn't tell me I was under arrest or nothing, right? He didn't read my rights, and he didn't tell me to turn around and cuff up or nothing. And I started walking back to the trailer, right? Not running nothing, and that's when he shot me with the stun gun.
Milner does have a criminal record. The Florida Department of Corrections website says he spent 20 years in prison on several charges, including sexual battery. He must now wear an ankle bracelet as a registered sex offender. But he says being tased was a painful first.
Yeah. I felt I was like that, and I really out of my mind a little bit when he stung me, because I ain't never been hit with a laser gun.
An incident report obtained through Georgia's open records law shows Milner was tased 3 times before he would cooperate with the deputy. Now, according to the Pulaski County Sheriff's Office rules about the use of tasers, any kind of resistance to an officer, even if it's just verbally saying, "I'm not going to jail," is enough to allow the use of a taser. It's why, even though the video shows Milner with his back to the officer and walking away, he was able to be tased. Chief Deputy Fremont says tasing Milner was a safer option than trying to physically restrain him, and says Milner's age, 67, is not a barrier to being tased.
In the scenario that took place out there on that day, the way the deputy handled it was proper.
But the man behind the camera, also a former cop, says things could have been handled better.
They're supposed to be public safety officers. They're supposed to serve and protect, and it didn't seem like they were doing either.
Well, it sounds like something out of the history books, but in 2013 in Wilcox County, proms are still segregated. That's because they're not organized by the school system, but hosted by private groups who feel they have the right to include or exclude anyone they want. But one group of friends decided to change that and plan a fun night for every student, and in a short time, they're already getting some international attention.
I finally got my dress yesterday.
Really? I did.
These high school seniors have grown up together since elementary school.
We're basically siblings. We spend more time together than anyone else.
But in Wilcox County, reminders of a past that brings painful memories for some.
They always had, quote unquote, the white prom and the black prom.
It's one of the only counties left where dances are still segregated. Only this year, Wilcox had an integrated homecoming court, but after Quanisha Wallace was elected queen, she wasn't allowed to the party because she's black.
Hearing from other students that they didn't want me to go, it kind of saddened my heart a little.
Now, I'm sure you're wondering why segregated proms are even allowed in the first place. That's because in Wilcox County, technically, the school board has no control over them. They're actually private events. It's the parents that created the separate white prom where blacks aren't allowed, and it's been going on for years. So these kids are taking matters into their own hands, creating an integrated prom.
They decided we're going to plant our feet and we're going to make this happen. And so they're doing just that.
That means booking DJs, making flyers, and after hearing their situation, phones have been off the hook.
We have a guy that wants to donate LED lights. It's amazing. It's so beyond phenomenal right now.
While they say they've met backlash from some in their hometown, they've seen support from around the world.
Korea, London, England, Japan, Paris.
Planning a night to remember and changing history in the process. Did you ever think that you would have to be doing this?
No. But since we are, we're gonna make a change. Yeah.
Now, a few DJs have already offered to play at their prom for free, and they told me around half of the white students in their grade have already signed on to their prom instead of the whites-only prom. They say the school will sponsor proms again in the future when there is only one integrated prom where all students are welcome.
It was my life savings.
And now it's
gone.
Carolyn Benningfield says she had the all-American life, an Air Force husband, 2 sons, and a middle-class home in Warner Robins.
There was good times and then there was bad times.
After her husband died 3 years ago, she felt lonely.
That's when, I thought, I was looking for a good Christian man, and I went on Match.com.
And after a few months and a few misses, she thought she'd found her match, a widow from Macon who shared her Catholic faith.
When his profile came online, I had prayed to God to meet a good Christian man, and I thought that my dreams had come true.
The two hit it off early this year, chatting online every day, but soon the conversation turned to money when the man said he'd lost his luggage on a business trip to Ecuador.
And asked me if I could loan him $1,000.
So she did. But as time went on, the requests grew larger. He convinced Carolyn to invest thousands in his oil company. She never met the man and now believes he was using a false identity. The man listed this house on Rocky Creek Road in Macon as his address, but as we found out, not only does he not live here, neither does anyone else. Carolyn sent dozens of transfers to different accounts he claimed were used by his company. $40,000 to a bank in New Zealand, $3,000 each to people in Russia and Ecuador.
The banks did try to warn me, but I decided not to believe what they said because in my heart I felt that it was true.
In the end, she gave him all she had, a total of almost $800,000, and a potential tax lien on her home for emptying out her 401k.
I believe that he has traveled the world on my finances, on my life savings.
Losing everything for the promise of love.
You think something is right and nobody can tell you any different, but when it comes to hindsight like it is right now, I can see.
In Warner Robins, Tom George, 13 WMAZ Eyewitness News.